guys. I want to welcome you back again to the Preeminent Sales Pro podcast. Of course, my name is Piere Gooch, and I have with me the incredible Camron Sayyah. And of course, on these podcasts, my focus is to help people to discover the means, the methods, the mindsets, the mechanisms to become a preeminent sales pro. Now, I get this question all the time, which is, what does preeminence even mean? Preeminence in its simplest form just means being top of mind. It means being the go-to expert in your space. Instead of being a commodity, you're treated as an expert and authority. Instead of being like bottom rack, what is that, like a commodity-based kind of incentives, you get top billing on those kinds of things. And I have a person on this podcast today who, in my opinion, personifies those things. He even has a new backdrop for this podcast. And we're about to talk about that, man. But, man, it is good to see you again, my friend.
It is good to see you too, and we will definitely talk about that. We were talking a little bit about it before this began, but this is just for the listening. This is just so I can pretend to look smart. That's all this is for. I haven't read half of those books. It's just to look smart. That's all it is.
Speaking of pretending, I was reading a book from about to say Al Green, but Al Green is a singer, from Robert Greene.
Yeah.
In his book called The Laws of Human Nature, and he talked about the idea of the word persona or personality has to do with mask. And you talk a lot about that, right? So, like, what are some of the things that you tend to see that maybe the positives and negatives of this idea about wearing masks?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I think in order to really fully understand that question and the answer, at least according to me, is first we have to understand that we all wear one. And whenever we think of this concept of people wear, we tend to think, yeah, that's other people. Yeah, that's true about everyone else, but not me. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I think we make, is that we think we have this, we have this illusory immunity. We think that we are somehow special and we're somehow immune to this stuff, when nobody is, and everybody has a persona, everybody has a mask, and it's not all thing, it's just how we present ourselves to the outside world. And so I think in simple terms, what a mask is referring to, again, just according to Camron, is what do I want the world to see me as? What do I want other people to see me as? Like I said, I was joking around in the beginning when I was talking about my bookcase. I want people to see me as smart. I want people to see me a certain way. And I am not exempt from this. I have a way that I want people to see me. And I think part of it is a way for us to mask our, because if you think about what like an actual physical mask, a mask does two things. Number one is it presents an image to the outside, but on the inside, it's concealing what's underneath. And so I think as we're projecting an image, we're also concealing a lot of shame and insecurities and a lot of hidden stuff that lies under the surface. And again, I really do believe that no one is immune to that. And so I think part of our survival as a species is how we get along with our tribe and how we get along with other people. And part of that is going to entail projecting ourselves a certain way. And again, I don't think it's a malicious thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it's more rooted in our survival than we give credit for.
I think that's a powerful way of looking at it, but it also reveals an idea that sometimes we're wearing masks that are incongruent with the way we want to actually be seen.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, let's say this person's a salesperson, and we know, talk about this a little bit, that confidence is an incredible power in sales. If you can find a way to develop the sense of confidence and certainty, you can do and get away with a whole lot in sales, right? But there's some people who are on the sales calls, but their mask is of a insecure nature when they want to be more confident. So I guess, can you talk about like how to, I guess, like build a better mask, being able to come across the way we want to be seen? Like, how do we begin to kind of take stock and then begin to change those masks?
Yeah, beautiful question. I think the way I see it is not necessarily building a better, it's making the mask that we're already wearing less thick and more transparent, so that who we are on the inside is more clear on the outside. And I think there's very little divide, when there's a very, very small dividing line between what we are and who we are on the inside, I think that is in essence confidence, and that's, you know, genuine confidence in projecting yourself in a very authentic way. So
Mm-hmm.
to answer your question about confidence and how we can build that, I think first we have to define what confidence is and what confidence isn't. And what I think is a huge mistake, and I'm sure you can probably agree with this because you're very, very much in the trenches in the space and you probably see this all the time. But I think that there is a huge misconception about what confidence actually is, especially with people in the space. I think there is this idea or this notion that confidence equals posturing, it equals ego, it equals status or hierarchy or acting tough, acting cool, acting serious, or acting rigid or stoic. Genuine confidence is none of those things. And I think all of those things, that idea that we have of what confidence is to a lot of people, I think that's what we've been programmed from society, from movies, from culture. We've just been programmed to think that confidence is those things. I think real, genuine confidence is having a wonderful relationship with yourself. It's being able to sit with yourself in the dark and examine all of the demons and the insecurities and to be 100% okay with them and to work on them and to not be ashamed of them. I think genuine confidence is being comfortable. The only thing that you should ever compete for is never status or hierarchy. The only thing you should ever compete for in a social situation is comfort and to be the most comfortable person in the room. I think genuine confidence is having good expect for positive outcomes. So if you think about the brain, I'll get a little geeky for a second. The brain is a prediction machine. We like to predict the future based on patterns of the past. And so if we can start predicting positive outcomes, then I think that is a symptom of confidence as well. So confidence is a lot of these things. It's, if you think about it like a soup, has a lot of ingredients, but I think the main thing, the main components are wonderful relationship with yourself, where you are so happy with yourself and who you are, and you're so full that you want to share and transfer that feeling to other people because you have so much to give. And then I think the opposite of that, fake confidence, when you see posturing and ego, I think it's the opposite. So I think it might be somebody feeling empty inside or they're missing something. And so what do you do when you feel like you're missing something? What do you do to fill that space? You take from other people. And so that I've come to discover to kind of gauge where someone is or how genuine someone's confidence is just ask yourself, how do you feel when you're around this person? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? Or do you not feel anything? Because if you're interacting with someone and you leave the interaction feeling better than before you began the interaction, that's probably a sign that they're transferring their feelings of confidence to you. But if you feel worse about yourself, then that's also probably a red flag that something's maybe not adding up. So
that's a powerful predictor, man.
Yeah, man. And it's
That's a powerful predictor.
It's something that's that I've noticed. It's a pattern that I've noticed with people who are really confident. They will typically transfer that feeling over to other people because real confidence is contagious. And so to go back to your original question, develop that. I think it all starts with having a good relationship with yourself. I think it's not being so hard on yourself, which is, you know, every human can be hard on themselves. Even me, I struggle with it too. But I think accepting yourself, embracing yourself, understanding there's going to be more to work on, understanding that you're not going to be a finished product until you die, and understanding that everything is a work in progress, and to just love who you are in the present moment, as woo-woo as that sounds. I think that is a fantastic way to build genuine confidence in a genuine relationship with yourself, where all of that other stuff, all of the other traits of confidence happen as kind of like a domino effect of that one thing.
Yeah,
having that.
I think that's very true. I think it's very true. Walt Disney, I was watching a documentary from Walt Disney on the Disney network.
Oh, I would hope so.
On the Disney network. And I think the documentary was called Imagineering. It's a story about like how they came to be and how they started developing the rides and parks
Yeah.
and things like that. And the story, as the story went, when Walt Disney first opened Disneyland in Florida, it was they called it Black Sunday because there was so many problems. Problems such as like the tar on the pavement wasn't half finished, and they had to choose between water fountains and the plumbing for the bathrooms and a
Wow.
few other things. And it was such a fiasco that people started like really, demeaning Walt Disney for Disneyland. And they're talking about all the bad stuff that happened. And he goes on record to quote, he said, as long as there's imagination in the world, Disney World will never be finished.
Wow.
Right? So it's kind of like the same thing here. You know, there'll never be such thing as a perfect human being because there's always something new for humans to do. It's a
Oh yeah.
very good point, my friend. I really like it.
That's cool. I didn't know that about Disney, but that makes so much sense. It's I can't remember who said this, but we are never going to be a finished product until we die,
Mm-hmm.
or if we live forever. But even if we live forever, we're still always going to be working on ourselves. So that I think that's just one of the beauties of life is, whether it's with imagination, whether it's with, mental self-growth or just personal development, I think there's always going to be work to be done. And that is, I think that's a beautiful thing.
It's a powerful thing. I like this equation of their real confidence. Real confidence is having a genuine, positive relationship with self. And it kind of goes back to the segment you made a bit earlier, which is about the difference between building a mask and stripping away. Sometimes it's a matter of like putting all the fancy stuff to the side, the language patterns, body language, and all those other kinds of things, and really having us sit down and think, okay, like how do I generally feel from day to day? I think it was something that it doesn't matter what you have, where you live emotionally is how you truly live, is who you
Oh
truly
yeah.
are. Powerful point, powerful point. But this hasn't always been like your way of thinking, has it? Like, thinking about confidence and certainty in this way. So talk to me about like how you went from not thinking this way to thinking this way. Like what were the chain of events that happened that got you to this point?
Yeah, man. Um, I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like one of the things I don't like about social media is that social media is one big highlight reel.
Ah,
And
yes. That's good.
you know this,
That's
man.
good.
And
That's good.
everybody listening, you guys all know this. I don't need to convince you guys of any of this, but I think social media has kind of instilled this thought process where we unconsciously show off our best moments and our best sides of ourselves to other people, away the negative stuff and the bad stuff. And that's what I don't like about social media because there's so much more to a human than their content. There's so much more to a human than their persona. There's so much more to a human being than the stuff you see online.
Mhm.
And to answer your question about the progression, I got to preface it with the fact that I have not always felt congruent. Even to this day, I
Mhm.
struggle. And one of the things that I this is kind of hard for me to admit and to be open and vulnerable about. But one of the things that bothers me to this day is the praise that I receive. And I don't mean that in
Wow.
like an arrogant way, but whenever someone says, Cameron, I really like your content. Cameron, I really like your, I've been following you for months. I
Mhm.
always thank them. I'm always polite, but
Right.
in the back of my head, I'm thinking to myself, well, I haven't always believed in my content. There have been
Mhm.
posted something really motivational that got lots of hits and everything, but I did not feel at all like I was the type of person who was in alignment with that post. And there have been many
Wow.
times I've invested in coaching programs where I don't even show up to any of the calls.
Yeah.
I've been in management positions and leadership positions that I absolutely did not deserve to have at the time because I had not developed the leadership qualities to take on that role properly. And this has not been once or twice. This has been many times, even very, very recently, and even in the past, like inside of the past year, in the past couple months, I've had moments where I question the content that I put out. I question the demeanor and the persona and mask that I'm wearing on social media, and I know damn well that mask is not real. I know damn well that what I'm posting, what I'm saying is not the truth. And I am not as big of a deal as people make me out to be. I am not as big of a deal as I'm making myself out to be. And so I think going
what
back
you're talking about here, is you have the knowledge and expertise. It's just the fact that the way it's being seen or perceived, it's like I know I have the knowledge and skills, but I doubt that it's actually having the same impact or level of impact on other people.
Well,
Is that right?
I don't know if it's necessarily having the knowledge and skills, because there are times when I don't have the knowledge or the skills, but I present myself as if I do. And so when
Okay.
it comes to being fake, I am guilty of this. I am guilty of presenting an image that is not real. I am guilty of presenting an image that is not true. And this is gonna piss a lot of people off. This watching this episode should have warned you guys. This is real stuff. I am not. I honestly, in the past and even recently, I don't think that I have been the person that I have projected myself to be and that I have personified myself to be. And I think the recognition that I get is of someone that I am not. And I think the most important quality to have, especially in the online space, is authenticity, because I just can't stand fake people. And that's why I'm coming out and saying this, because I do not like fake people, and I don't want to be associated with people who just wear a brand or an image as their identity. But to answer your question, what was the chain of events that happened? A lot of it was that. A lot of it was event after event after event of me being out of congruence, out of alignment, and me just going through these pitfalls of depression, these pitfalls of imposter syndrome, these pitfalls of questioning myself and doubting myself, and these pitfalls of not believing in myself and not believing in my future and giving up on myself and giving up on my dreams. And I think it was, it's been a roller coaster ride over the years, especially in the online space. And the going on 4 years I've been in the space, it was, it may have started off with a closing position that I wasn't necessarily a good performer in. And then I moved on to a different offer. And then I somehow charmed my way into a manager position. I remember the first sales manager position I ever had, I did not deserve it. I will tell you right now. And I'm not just saying that to be hard on myself. I'm saying that objectively. And there are certain people that are watching this that were on my team who can confirm this. I did not deserve that position. I wasn't the right type of person. It should have gone to someone else. And it should have gone to one. You know who you are watching this. I'm not going to say your name, but you know who you are. It should have gone to you, man. You know who you are. Not to mention any names. But it was that. It was offer after offer after offer, and me feeling like I was biting off more than I could chew. Because I wanted the status, but I did not want to become the person for the role. And it was a pattern. It was a consistent pattern of me wanting an image more than I wanted an identity.
When did you realize it?
Sorry?
When did you realize it?
I realized it a lot later than I should have. I realized it probably inside of the past 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Probably beginning of the year.
Wow. I think it's a striking thing to say, because I think some people don't ever figure that out. Even when you get on sales calls and people are like, "Oh, I wish I was I started this 3 years ago." Like, there's certain people right now who still haven't figured it out. Right, so that's good.
Yeah, man. I guess it's all about awareness. I think for me, it's better late than never. But this is just you asked, like, what was the chain of events, and I think it was a consistent pattern that kept repeating itself that it didn't click into my brain until very recently. And that's a lot of people have noticed. You've probably noticed I've gone silent on social media. I've pulled back, and it's because I'm going through this massive identity shift. I realized that for the longest, for years, I've been essentially, for lack of a better word, I've been a fraud. And there's no other word for it. There's no sugarcoating it, but I felt like a fraud. And so I think that's why I've pulled back to really align myself. If I'm going to post something, if I'm going to put myself out there, it has got to be who I am, or else I cannot stand behind the post.
That's interesting.
Gotten heavy.
I think I think that I think that I think the biggest thing is just like dealing with areas of your life. So for example, I think that you can be really, really good in one aspect, but terrible in another,
Yeah,
right? And as a person, as a human being, you may be solid, but it's the roles that you play are not as congruent or as perfect as they really should be,
yeah,
right? And I think that the realization that you kind of come to is just like you as a person, a genuine person, an authentic person, are realizing that in a certain role that you're playing, that you're not living up to the expectations that you yourself have already set. Does that make
yeah,
sense? Now, here's the kicker with something like that, right? The kicker to something like that is like a person who isn't authentic can't realize that,
yeah.
right?
That's
It's
true.
like being a chef. It's like being a chef, right? If you've never tasted good food, you can't tell what good food is.
If you've only eaten McDonald's,
Yeah, yeah.
and
The only thing you can say is this isn't McDonald's. This isn't McDonald's. Matter of fact, I was watching a video. I think it was a reel on YouTube or whatever it was, where Chef Gordon Ramsay was doing a kids show. I don't know what the name of the show was, and the kid brought him this dish. I think it was like tuna or salmon or whatever it was, and he said, "What is this supposed to be?" And the child went on to explain what it was. He said, "What do you think it is? Do you think it is raw, medium well, or something like that?"
yeah,
And the kid was like, "I think it is well." And so Gordon cut the thing open or something he did with it, and he said, "Unfortunately, it's medium well, or it's medium or raw, something like that." I think he said it was medium. And the kid, you can see how the kid was crushed. He said, "But that's it because you this sauce or whatever it is that you were using is really, really good." But the idea is that because Gordon had been around, he had already had this experience, he already had this personality, he had this knowledge. It was easy for him to determine what was going on with this and how to fix it, right?
yeah,
So I think that's what kudos to you, my friend. It's the fact that out of a good, genuine place, you're recognizing that there's a deeper level or a greater level to your expertise or experience that you have yet to tap into, which I think is really, really good. And I think this is something that you've done your entire life. I mean, everything from, way, way back when in the employee 9 to 5 world to now working with Chase Hughes, arguably one of the greatest authorities on the freaking planet,
yeah.
right? Shout out to Chase Hughes. But like, I want to ask you, like, you have a you have a really, really good sense of fun, right? A really, really good sense of fun, a really, really good sense of humor. And I don't see that in a lot of authorities, right? Like I'm talking like way back. Like I remember one post that you did with your wife. I think it was Christmas or something like that, and it was like the suburban dad uniform or something like that. Was that what it's called?
The white dad uniform.
The
Yeah.
white dad uniform.
Yeah.
But you talk about this a lot. I know you talk about this a lot in your posts and your content that like a sense of humor is really, really important to have. So like, can you talk about like how you develop such a great sense of humor, such a personable personality? Like, how do you win friends and influence people the way you do?
Uh, Good question, and not a reference to the book, but good question nonetheless. I'll do my best to answer without making any Dale Carnegie references. Um,
You
I
win
think
flies with bees instead of vinegar.
it
There you go.
smile, shake people's hands, use people's names, make eye contact. All right, for that. Um, for me, I think yes, sense of humor is everything, and more than a sense of humor, just a sense of enjoyment. And I'm
Mm,
borrowing from our buddy Chase Hughes here, but
mm,
one thing I have learned from him and being on his team is that enjoyment is the gateway to everything else.
mm,
Enjoyment and comfort are both
mm,
huge, huge catalysts for uh, becoming the type of person that you want to be and for becoming a genuine person and a genuine leader. Sense of humor for me, I think that began in childhood. My dad was always a very charismatic individual. I know I've talked a little bit about it, but
Mm-hmm.
my dad was always life of the party. He's always cracking
Mm-hmm.
jokes. He's always, he's very charismatic, a lot of charisma, very
Mm-hmm.
witty, he's very quick, very quick to
Mm-hmm.
respond, very fast on his feet.
Mm-hmm.
And being exposed to that ever since I was a kid and just always being around that, I think a little bit of it rubbed off onto me, or a lot of it rubbed off onto me because my brother certainly didn't get any of it. And if you're watching this, Preston, if you're watching this, Preston, I love you, but you were ugly. And
I don't believe in pressing. I don't believe in pressing. It's all on one side.
No, I love my brother. I love my brother. He's just got a face that only a mother could love. But oh, I love you, dude. I love you. If you're watching this, I love you, dude. No, but yeah, I think I got a lot of it from my dad growing up. And then when I was older, I didn't realize I did this. I didn't realize this was a thing I did until way, way later. I realized that I was doing something. I had a very intuitive way of modeling and modeling people.
Yes.
So I always looked up to it could be, a manager that I worked for at a restaurant, or be somebody I see on YouTube, a stand-up comedian on YouTube, or just anybody, a stranger, anywhere, anytime, anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I had this way of picking up on certain, not just actions or behaviors, but certain worldviews that people had that allowed them to be like that, certain attitudes and mindsets that people had underneath those behaviors. And I've always had this very intuitive and natural way of kind of molding those into my own character and just kind of weaving those into the fabric of who I am. And so over the years, me developing the sense of humor I have now and the enjoyment has just been accumulation of being exposed to a lot of other people. Some of them I'm very close to, like my dad was a huge piece. And then other people are literal strangers on the street, and then everyone in between who have these certain qualities and certain traits that I just kind of adopted, like kind of like a psychological kleptomaniac. Like I see these things and
what a name, psychological kleptomaniac. What
yeah,
a name.
And I stole that name from someone else who used it. So I'm even robbing people of their terms. But yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just a combination and a series of being exposed to many different people over time and just modeling their worldview and some of their behaviors and attitudes.
For people who may not know what modeling is, like, how do you model a person?
Good question. I think the best way to not model someone is to copy their physical actions or the words that they speak. That's the least effective way to model someone. The way that I think that you should model a person is to not model their words, don't model their behaviors, but model their worldview. How does this person view the world, where their behavior is a byproduct of that? How does this person about themselves? How does this person view themselves? Because all of their words, all of their speech, all of their behaviors are just a byproduct of that. So I go for the cause and not the symptom. And so if I'm going to model someone, I always ask myself those questions. How does this person view the world? How does this person view themselves? And what's their relationship with the world? What's their relationship with themselves? And what are some elements of that I can absorb?
Right. For those of you who want to kind of go deeper into this idea, there's a concept called neurological levels by, I think his name is Robert Dills. I think that's the person's name.
Yes, sleight of mouth. Yes.
Sleight of mouth. And what he's talking about, or describing is that there are levels of change. One of them is environment, which is being the lowest. Then there is behavior, right? And then there is capability and ability. So we're still moving up. And then some of the higher levels would be beliefs and values, identity, mission, and purpose, right? So what Cameron is referring to when he's talking about the best and the worst ways to model, he's talking about moving from beliefs and values to identity to mission and purpose. So once you have a good solid understanding about them, you can now understanding the whys behind, like, let's say their behavior, their attitudes, their capabilities, and the environments that they choose to be in, right? So there's kind of a bit of a caveat around that. I like what you said a bit earlier about the fact that enjoyment and comfort are powerful. I was talking to Michael Dunleavy on a previous podcast, and he talked about that one of the ways he begins to judge a technique or a strategy that he uses in sales is to whether he enjoys it or not, if it works. And I asked him, I said, what is your criteria? The question I asked him was, do you value like enjoyment over effectiveness? And
Mm,
his thought process was, it's like, if it works, then I'll automatically enjoy it. But also, if I enjoy it, it will automatically work. So it's like a thing. So
yeah,
being able to be comfortable and being able to enjoy are powerful indicators of even how you do sales and selling. So very, very good point. Very, very, very good
100%.
point. What do you feel like has been um, like I know you're always learning, always learning, but you also have a great knack for actually implementing too. Like, for example, you have a really, really big thing with magic, right? And magic is not it is a cognitive skill. Like, you can just read books on it, but you can't own the skill until you actually do it. And a lot of people may not know this, but like I think you had a TV show or something like that with that, right?
That's a whole story, but it was almost a TV show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I auditioned for it. The audition is still on YouTube, so if you guys are still watching, if you comment audition in the comments, I will personally send you the link. This was almost 10 years ago. I was 23. I'm 32. I was 23, and it's me doing a magic trick for the camera. They selected me. They told me I was going to be on a show. It was a celebrity panel. It's kind of like America's Got Talent. You go
Okay.
on stage, you perform for 90 seconds, and then
Mhm.
they judge you, and then they give you a prize. I don't remember any more details after that. But I do remember one of the judges. I think one of them was Tom Green. The other one was Andrew Dice Clay, and I love Tom Green.
There's a name we
So
haven't heard in
that
a
was
while.
for me. It was really exciting. I was working on my routine. I had this thing nailed down. It was like 6 weeks in advance, so I was really perfecting this routine.
Mm,
And I got an email 2 days before I was supposed to fly to
mm,
California to LA to film the show.
mm,
2 days before saying from the show saying that they something and they had to cancel the show and the
mm.
show ended up never airing and I went into this really depressive state. I remember I locked myself in my room. I lived with roommates at the time. I locked myself in my room and I on Netflix just because I was loathing and like I was
Right.
wallowing in self-pity. I put on like Teletubbies and I just had a bag of Cheetos.
Teletubbies.
Yeah, I had a bag of Cheetos. I was watching Teletubbies and
Or
I
you
was just
went down. What?
I went
Teletubbies?
down. That was my rock bottom, man. And 3 days later I came out all this like, facial hair. Like
Wow.
I looked like a caveman and my roommates were just like, are you
Are you
okay?
okay?
Like we heard some crying coming from we heard some moaning. Are you
Oh
all right?
man.
So
Oh
yeah,
man.
that's what happened with the TV show.
Yeah. So no fans, if you hear your friend in the room listening to Teletubbies, call someone.
Call a hotline. Call a
Call,
suicide hotline.
oh my God. Teletubbies, man, that's the name. Tom Green is a name I haven't heard in a long, long time.
Oh yeah.
Tom Green. And you even got you went so far with your skill set, man, that you even got a chance to be around Penn and Teller, right?
I did. My wife, when we were still dating, as a matter of fact, we had only been dating for a month. We started dating in January, and then that February for Valentine's Day. So 1 month in, she got us tickets to go see Penn and Teller later that October. So what she was saying was, "Hey, I know I've only been dating you a month, but I have so much faith that we're still going to be together by October that we're going to go see Penn and Teller." So we went to go see
What
the
a
show.
clever
Awesome
tactic.
show. And the cool thing about Penn and Teller is every single show that they do, they always, without exception, hang out after the show outside
Wow.
and they take selfies with every single person. Sometimes they're there past midnight because they're taking
Wow.
pictures and signing autographs. So I still have, as a matter of
Wow.
this deck of cards right here,
Uh-huh.
signed by Penn on the front and
Wow.
Teller on the back.
Wow.
Yes, sir. So that was
I,
a fun time.
I didn't know, speaking of like deck of cards, man, I didn't know there were so many different kinds. Like I
Oh,
seen like an ad of uh like I think it calls it like a card mechanic is the word for it, but it's like this whole like little like specialized deck and colors and holographics and stuff. And I was like, that is incredible. That is great.
Oh yeah. There
Do you have your own specialty deck?
I don't have my own personal like custom deck, but I do know, I will say that there is not enough room on three of these bookshelves to store all the decks of cards that I have. There's an entire
Wow.
closet in my house in the other room dedicated. There's bins and tubs full of
Wow.
decks of cards. Oh
I'm
yeah.
not, I'm not, I'm not going to see that. That's gonna be great.
You are
That's gonna be
always
great.
welcome, my friends.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I think that kind of going back to like sales and persuasion for sure, and skill building. That's what I was going to get to. Had lost my train of thought.
Sorry for sidetracking you.
It's okay. I thought about the magic. Man. I was like, yeah, man, I forgot all about that. But like speaking like skill building and things like that, like what are some of the, let's say, like, because you, like I said, you've learned quite a bit. You've been around some of the best in the world. As a matter of fact, I think you're even being trained by Eli Sanchez, who's a legend in our sales space, right? What
Yeah.
are some of the crossover tools or techniques or strategies that you've seen in the influence persuasion world hanging around with Chase that directly correlate to your sales training and stuff like with Eli Sanchez?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. I thought you'd never ask. So let's I thought you, the sales pro, would never ask a sales question. How silly of
Gotta be on the gotta underwhelm it, man. Gotta underwhelm it.
You just swooped in like
That's
Batman.
moving in, man.
Love it. Yeah, let's divide that into two categories. So category one, Eli Sanchez. It has been, and I'm sure Eli, you're going to be watching this, man. It has been. I still can't describe what it's like, man, to meet with him, to know him, to get to know him, to befriend him, to have the relationship that I have with him over the past couple months, where it started out kind of like Chase. Like I started out as a fan. I've admired him from the background. I've admired him from the stadium, and now I'm meeting with him. He's running the Chase Hughes team meetings every day. I'm texting him, I'm talking to him, we're sending each other voice notes. He's doing one-on-ones with me all the time, training me on things, and it honestly feels like, for any of the musicians out there, imagine jamming on stage one-on-one with your favorite rock star. That's what it feels like. So learning from him has been incredible, just absolutely
How did that
incredible.
relationship come to be?
Well, I got to give some credit to our buddy Christian Jack.
Mr. Jack?
Mr. Jack. He worked his networking magic, man. I originally approached him the beginning of the year, and Christian, if you're watching this, I love you, man. The beginning of the year, I told him my dream was to be on Chase Hughes' team, and I knew that Christian and Eli Sanchez they knew each other. So I'm like, hey, I know Eli Sanchez runs Chase's company, so if you could ever make that introduction. And he's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll connect you guys on WhatsApp. And that was domino number one. And so that's how I met Eli, was through Christian. And then we had a call, which led to another call, which led to a bunch of other calls, which led to me joining the team, and here I am. But that's Eli. It's been incredible over the past 6 months. And then some transferables. That's the golden stuff right there. The mistake I made was thinking that, Chase Hughes, for those of you who don't know, Chase Hughes teaches what's called tradecraft. It's very covert persuasion. It's the kind of stuff that he teaches like intelligence agencies, and like he teaches the government. If you think about Jason Bourne, he trains and develops the real life Jason Bournes of the world. So this really secret spy stuff. I made the mistake of thinking that stuff could substitute for not having sales skills up to par.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So what I did, my cocky ass got back into sales, and I started trying to use tradecraft only on calls, thinking that running a confusion pattern and doing some secret stuff is gonna just make people pull out their credit card like a Jedi mind.
Come on, man. That's true.
Embedded command, buy now, and they're gonna buy. But it just doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work that way.
The biggest transferable thing that I noticed from Chase and from just sales in general, it's not the fancy stuff. The fancy stuff is cool and it does work, but the answer will always lie in the framework. The answer will always lie in the basics. So social skills, confidence, authority, those things, those critical elements, 100% transferable, whether you're in sales, whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're an interrogator, whether you're a parent, doesn't matter what you do or who you are, those things are universal. And another way that, if you listen to Chase's material, one thing that Chase says is if you could get in a time machine and go back in time 100,000 years, a confusion pattern is not going to work on your ancestor, but authority will. You stepping out of that time machine with confidence and congruence, that stuff will influence people back then, but your language doesn't. So if it could work back in time, it's probably really important today still.
Yep.
So those are the things. It's the transferable things are the things that have stood the test of time, in my opinion.
I think it's the line from Chase Hughes, right? Which is just like the best persuasion is usually some of the older things. Things are the most oldest. I don't know if most oldest is a word. Is that the right phrase? The oldest things actually work. Right?
I'm not sure. My grammar is like of a 5-year-old, so don't ask me.
Yeah, like most oldest, it doesn't feel right. Anyway, so I want to touch on something that I think you kind of glaze over some, and I think this is kind of like another one of those recurring things as I kind of like spend a lot of time learning for this interview. It's just like having the right kinds of people around you. There's a lot of talk about building networks and things like that as a rule of thumb, but I think that people don't. I think that people go a little overboard on that, and they don't think about who are the kinds of people I actually want to be around. So, like, can you talk me through like how have you begun to build like really, really solid networks of people around you?
Yeah, that's huge. It's that old cliche that you're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Well, we live in an age where everything's remote, everything is virtual, everything is online, and I think human to human interactions are definitely still around and prominent, but they're diminishing. They're certainly less than they were a couple decades ago. So I think for me, you're not just the average of your network of people. You're not just the average of your network of people, whether it's online or in person. But I also think that you are the average of all of the content that you consume as well. I think the content that you consume is your network too, especially today when this whole world is made up of content. It's comprised of content. And so the things that you consume, your brain diet, your mental diet, you look at someone's body and you can tell just by looking at someone what their level of fitness is, what their level of activity is. But then their brain, well, you necessarily can't see it, you can definitely feel it. And so if I'm around somebody who has a good and healthy mental diet, that is something that I think has a heavy influence on who you are and who you become, is not just the people that you're around, which, yes, very important. But for me, you asked me, how do I do it? I do it by I always try to interact with people like yourself, with just amazing people. I'm very blessed to be surrounded by really cool people like Eli, everybody on the Chase team, Chase himself. But then when I'm not interacting with them, I substitute that free time with consuming content from people who I aspire to be like.
So, like, do you have like a set time that you do like this content time? Like, I know that entrepreneurs have like in the morning time I'm doing sales stuff, and then in the evening time I'm doing mindset stuff. Like, do you have something like that, or just kind of like as you're able to do stuff?
It's usually as I'm able to do it. I try not to be too rigid, because the more rigid I am with something, this is just a pattern I've noticed, the more rigid I am, the more likely it is that I'm going to give up on it if something doesn't go exactly according to plan. So
spoken like a true creative.
There are guys like Christian Jack, the most organized guys I know. But Absolutely. For me, I can't be too detailed, because number one, I get overwhelmed very easily. Number two,
Same here.
I tend to lose motivation quickly. If I find myself deviating from that routine that I set for myself, then I think of it as a failure. Oh no, I wasn't able to do this, might as well give up on it. And so I found that for me, what works best for me long term, to keep a habit long term, is to stay consistent with it. stay committed to it, but to be a little bit more free flowing with it. So, I'll do it when I can, when I have the time. So for the most part, at 80% of the time, it's on my way to the gym in the car. I'll just put something on. A lot of times it's in between calls. It's in between meetings. It's before I start my day. How do I prime my brain and prime myself to approach the day? I think the things at the beginning of the day will set up the way that you navigate the rest of the day. And so I try to front load all of that stuff as early as possible, so that way I can have it running in the background as I go throughout the day.
I see. You talk that kind of goes along the lines of like productivity. And I'm a big believer that productivity has a lot to do with the income goals that you set. So for example, like if you were to, I forget where I got this from, but it's like if you were to write down on a note card or at the top of a sheet of paper, like this is how much I would like to be making in a day. And then you kind of audit the activities that you're doing and see, are these in alignment with this amount? And like, will it help me get to this amount? It becomes easy to kind of suss out what is or is not important. But I like the idea of like there's still like this idea about being too full front, because I can't do the over scheduling either. Too much structure, it's like straight up like it's time to go thing for me.
Yeah.
Like it's time to blank out. And so like, how do you manage being free flowing, still being loose, with being productive?
That's a good question. It's definitely a balance, and it's definitely taken me a lot of trial and error. And I'm even today, I'm far from an expert in being productive and productivity. But what I found,
you're doing pretty good. I think you're doing pretty good.
I appreciate that, sir. What I found works for me is as long as I have a loose structure, as long as I have a couple of pillars, a couple of my non-negotiables. So sleep, nutrition, exercise, mindset, and even spirituality. As long as I have these pillars, everything else in between, I can be as free flowing as I want, as long as I'm within the boundaries of the non-negotiables. So it's like, hey, I have free reign to go wherever I want, do whatever I want, as long as I'm as long as I'm checking off those other boxes, then everything else is free flow. So there's a balance of.
Do you have like a to-do list? Is that what you mean? Do you have something like that or no?
I don't use a to-do list per se. It's almost like a mental list of things that I check. So yeah, like what I'm describing is a to-do list, but it's like a mental to-do list. Okay. I'm like, wow, I just took 15
I think it is right. Yeah, that's right.
I took way too long to describe a to-do list, but yes, that's exactly what that is a mental to-do list.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, because like even in sales and selling, like you think about, there's an argument in the space about whether you should or should not use a script. And the reality is, it's like that question, because yes, you are using a script. The only determining factor is whether it's written down or in your mind. Right?
That's true.
And that kind of goes back up to a much bigger thing that you and I talk about a lot of times, and Chase talks about a lot as well. It's like the invisible scripts that we run in terms of behavior. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I forgot the classifications for was. What were the three types of scripts? Do you remember?
3 types
from Chase? Like scripts. I think it's like one of them was like generational scripts or.
Oh yeah. There's 2 types of scripts. There's
don't get mad at me, Chase.
Don't fire me, Chase. There's lifetime scripts and then ancestor script. So lifetime script is a memorized behavior pattern that we learn throughout our lives, kind of like driving a car, tying our shoes, brushing our teeth. And then ancestor script. So these are the things that we come out of the womb with. These are the things that were passed down from our ancestors that kept our ancestors alive.
How are life scripts developed? Is this like the habit formation kind of thing?
Habit formation. That's exactly what a life script is. It's something that you repeat enough times throughout your life that it becomes memorized. And your brain likes to conserve energy. When you think about the first time you ever learned how to drive a car,
Mm-hmm.
It was a monumental task in the beginning because there's so many things you got to pay attention to, right? You got to pay attention to the road, to the mirrors, to all the buttons and the console and the steering wheel and the brakes and everything. But over time, as you repeat the process, it becomes less and less cognitive effort that you have to spend, to the point where now, if you drive a car, this happened to me this morning on my way home from the gym, and I'm like, I pulled into my house and I'm like, who was driving the car for the last 20 minutes? I blanked out. That's because it's completely unconscious. And so that's with everything. Everything that we do enough times becomes a script. And so it's kind of like Chase describes them like apps. Everybody's running a script. Everybody has an app open. It's just a matter of like, hey, what app is this person running, and how can I get them to switch to a different app? But now we're kind of dipping into the influence side of it. But that's essentially what how a life script is developed.
Y'all know you've been in both sales management, you're in sales management and taking sales calls. I think you're still doing a lot of that now. Like when you see people on sales calls, like I see a lot of people that deal with, like, let's say fear objections, for example. And fear is because it is an emotionally driven kind of objection, it can be difficult to kind of get around it. So like, how do you approach dealing with fear, both, let's say, in a therapy coaching kind of context on sales calls? Like, do you feel like they are handled differently or a bit the same?
Honestly, I feel like it's the same.
Okay.
The way that you would handle it therapeutically is, I think that's the best way to handle it on a sales call, because think about it. In a therapeutic sense, the operator and the subject, as an operator, I have to come from a place of authority, confidence, and composure in order to transfer that feeling of comfort and composure to the other person. And if I myself am going through fear, if I'm a therapist and I've got a patient, if I have fear, I'm going to be speaking fear into the other person, no matter what words I'm saying. I could be saying the right words, but they're coming from a place of fear, so I'm transferring that fear over. So same thing.
That's a real thing.
It is a real thing, 100% a real thing. Where you speak from is where you speak to. And so if I'm on a sales call with a prospect who's going through fear, number one, I have to understand their fear, and I have to be in a place in my life where I've dealt with that fear in myself, because how the hell can I help someone else overcome their fear when I don't even know how to overcome it myself? That's incongruent. So I have to be congruent, I have to be confident, and I also have to be composed. And those three things I transfer to the other person. Not physically, not like, hey, plug in this USB, I'm going to transfer this feeling over to you, but it's more.
Let me get you this file download, man.
Yeah, click download. I transfer it with my behavior. It comes through in my behavior. And so that's step number one, is you have to be the person. It comes from your character and it comes from who you are. Step number two is all we're doing, and this is borrowing from Chase's PCP model, the perception, context, permission. You change their perception, which means you change the way they view the problem, change camera angle and shift it. You change the context, so you change the meaning of the thing. And then by changing the way they see it, by changing the meaning, you're giving them permission to behave differently, to take a different level of action. And so all persuasion on planet Earth, whether it's sales or anything, is perception, context, permission, in that order. And again, this is not me. This is coming from Chase Hughes. But yes.
If you were to leave someone with a message, let's say that you're in the middle of a conversation, like, what is the type of impression or way of thinking you like to leave someone with when they leave your presence?
Damn. I wish you had asked me this beforehand so I could come up with a really cool answer.
Got sneak it in, man. Got sneak it in, right?
Oh man.
Because I'll give you time to think about it. Because here's something that I really do believe in. This is something I'm seeing from a lot of the sales pros I'm bringing on the show. It's just like all of them have this thing about, it's not just what they are saying that has made them successful. It is how people feel about them or think about them when they leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way I always like to describe is like there's an impression of increase on the person after they've left. And I think you talked about this a bit earlier when you talked about the difference between confidence and posturing, how the person feels. So like if someone were to leave your presence, like what is the things that you wish you want them to be thinking about you about? Like what are the characteristics or traits or maybe ideas you would like to leave them with?
Here's one.
Mm,
Always treat and meet like they are the most important person on earth.
mm,
And if you can do that, whether they're a stranger, whether they are your partner, whether they're your best friend, whether they're your family, doesn't matter who they are, treat every human being that you interact with like they're the most important person on earth. Now, I will say as a caveat, I am guilty of not following that advice. I am guilty of not doing that. But I always try to stay conscious of it, and I do my best every day to live and breathe that advice because number one, everybody deserves to be treated that way. Everybody
yes.
deserves your undivided attention. Everybody deserves to feel like they're the only person in the room when you're talking to them. Everybody deserves to feel special, to feel validated, to feel important. And number two, whether you believe in this or not, I'm a big believer in karma. I'm a big believer in, what you put out, you get back. And the energy out, if you just want to study the laws of thermodynamics, laws of physics,
Yep.
all energy returns to its source of origin.
Very true.
And that includes the way we leave people. Everything is energy. And the
Very true.
energy we put out, the way we make people feel, the energy we give to people will all eventually come back to us tenfold in various infinite ways. And so do good for other people and good things will happen to you. Again, big believer in karma. So the good you put out, you'll get back. And the same thing goes with, if you're an asshole, then maybe some not so good things will happen to you. So,
Assholery.
That's the message I'd leave with people. Just don't try too hard to be somebody you're not. I think there's a lot of pressure on people nowadays to
Yes.
be something they're not, and
Especially in the Western world.
especially in the Western world with social media culture, man. I think
Man.
a lot of pressure from social media that kind of programs us to want to compare ourselves with other people. But I think once you realize that it just starts to make perfect sense to let all of that stuff go, to live authentically. And
Yep.
it's so much easier to live that way. I think that's when for some people the world starts to look different and you can just let all that stuff go and just be yourself because being fake is really exhausting. And I know that because I've
Among other things.
but yeah, that's the advice
Man.
that I would give.
Alpha man. Man, thank you again for showing up here, man, and being amazing, man. One of my favorite people in the world, man. And I look for
You say that about everyone, don't you?
No. No. Man, I know we have to go, man, and I know we have I think I have to take calling you do too. But man, I look forward to talking with you again soon, man. Hopefully you'll come back a good time with me again.
Hell yeah, you can count on it, man. This is only episode 1. There will be more to follow if you will be so kind as to have me as a guest again. But thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Now remember, you guys, mediocrity only scales incrementally, but preeminence scales exponentially. I look forward to seeing you guys again. Bye-bye.
Later.